Selection Sunday is here. It has happened. We finally have our brackets for the NCAA basketball tournament. March Madness is here. It's the best time of the year when you're talking about just overall sports. Super Bowl, NCAA, March Madness. It's here. Selection Sunday. They have come out with the brackets. We're going to talk about each section of the bracket, who maybe should not have made the tournament, who is shockingly that's made the tournament, and maybe who the experts have left out. So we'll be showing the bracket. And of course, talking about Illinois fighting Illini, who did get the 5 seed and has to play number 13. Or Illinois got the 4 seed, and they have to play now number 13 ranked Chattanooga, who is 27-7, who is not a pushover by any means, any stretch of the imagination. This is a tough draw for the Illinois. Let's not get it twisted. So we're going to talk all of that here on the Coach Steve Show podcast. So welcome in. If you're watching the video version, thank you so much. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button. If you're listening to it wherever you listen to your podcast in audio form, please follow it, rate it, be a friend, tell a friend, all that good stuff. This podcast is brought to you by the Belly Up Media Network. If you go to Belly Up Media, I believe it's Belly Up Media or bellyupsports.com, we're doing some changes. So go check out Belly Up Media on Twitter and Facebook. Check out all the podcasts and blogs and everything there. This podcast is also brought to you by Coach Stone Football and his Back to the Basics Drill Manuals book series. If you go to CoachStoneFootball.com and check out all the books there for us football coaches, we are trying to get simple and back to the basics. If you click on Back to the Basics on that website, check out all the books. His very first book is over 500 pages of drills that can be used for any level. You will never have to look up another drill again, I promise. Thank you, Coach Stone, for sponsoring the podcast. And all you football coaches out there that are listening, it's time to protect those shells and protect your offensive defensive linemen who hit every single time in the season. They're always hitting. That's why it's the best position in all of football to be an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman. So you want to protect those shells and reduce the repetitive blows those guys take in each and every week. And it's Guardian Caps. If you go to guardiansports.com/guardian-caps and use the code 15 off, it will save 50% off your order. It's worn over by over 5 NFL teams and 200 plus colleges like Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, Penn State, and over 200. So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And I'm here to save you money. If you want to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 100, doesn't matter. Guardiansports.com/guardian-caps and use the code 15 off. It will save 15% off your order. Thank you, Guardian Caps, for sponsoring the podcast. Okay, so we got through Selection Sunday. It was, we watched some conference championships today. I know watching the Big Ten, Iowa won the Big Ten tournament. Illinois, Wisconsin got a share of the regular season Big Ten tournament. So then Iowa won over Purdue versus for the Big Ten championship, the tournament championship. And then you've got a bunch of other ones. That was the one I mainly watched. But then we got Selection Sunday. The bracket is finally out. Some hearts were broken. Some are still going. Some are shocked to be in. Some are happy to be in. We still have some playing games. The Big Ten leads all conferences with 9 teams. So that tells me that we are, flowing the hair, the best basketball conference, which we had a lot last year and we didn't do very well. So the Big Ten has to step up. This is the worst time of the year for me. It's the best time and worst time. It's the best time because you just love watching basketball. You love filling out the brackets. You love watching all the games. If you can, don't get in trouble at work, guys. But it's also tough because you want to root for the Big Ten or your conference that your team is in to do well. But at the same time, do we really want to root for Michigan? Do we really want to root for Iowa? That's where the dilemma for me comes in. I talk too much crap about all the other teams. One thing that is kind of funny, and I have not talked about it much, is Mike Krzyzewski's last game versus North Carolina. This has been a retirement tour for Coach Mike Krzyzewski, and no matter, he is a great basketball coach. He, he's done a lot for Duke. He is the face of Duke. But this whole season has been about him, even though he says he hates it, which maybe he does. But then announcing your retirement and doing a retirement tour, people celebrating you wherever you go, great. But at the same time, that is making it about you. So it's been kind of funny how he's been beat a couple times and losing to a couple teams. And then it's been a joke of he's going to request to go play in a certain region and everything else. Now he's got to go all the way to the West, all the way from East to the West, which is hilarious. I think he wanted to play in the East or like in the Midwest and Chicagoland area or anything. So I think that's kind of funny that he can't be able to do that. So, but we're here talking about Illinois. Illinois got the 4 seed, which they projected to be anywhere between the 3 and the 5 seed, even though they got beat by Indiana in the Big Ten tournament. They get the 4 seed and they have to play number 13 Chattanooga, which is not an easy draw. I do feel better about it than the Loyola pick that was last year, even though some people feel better about the one this year. I just thought Loyola was always a sleeper. That's a team that was underranked, and that's why I was worried about it. I think Chattanooga is probably right where they need to be, even though they're 27-7, 14-4 in their conference. Just looking at their schedule, we'll look at their schedule or talk about their schedule. I'll show the bracket on screen if you watch the video version. We won't show the schedule. I'll have it up on this other screen. But just look at their schedule compared to, like, I'm not saying Loyola has a tougher schedule, but just looking at it, there's good basketball being played, but Illinois has had a rougher go in their schedule. But they're a tough team. There is some history between Illinois basketball and Chattanooga basketball. They've played it since the 90s, but I think they've played in the NCAA tournament before. But this is exactly where we all predicted Illinois to be. Sorry, we're getting through some internet stuff here. So they're set to play on Friday, March 18th. The time is still yet to be set up, but this is exactly where we thought Illinois would be. Some thought maybe less, maybe 5 or 6 because of how they played in the Big Ten tournament. So right now, Illinois is on a losing streak versus Chattanooga. The last matchup they've had for Illinois basketball was November 21st, 2015. They lost 77-81 to Chattanooga. And then they also played March 16th, 1997, and they also lost to them. So there's a little bit. Their first matchup, Illinois lost 75-63, and then they lost in 2015, 77-81. So there's a little bit of history. The first time they played was in a neutral site in the tournament in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then they played in another neutral site in November 2015 in Springfield, Illinois. So Illinois is going to have revenge on their mind. But the reason why people are like, oh my gosh, Chattanooga, is because of this. I just want to make sure I got the correct dates right here and everything. So Chattanooga, the history is they have Illinois' number. So Illinois' Bruce Weber did retire. Good luck to Bruce Weber. I loved him at Illinois. It was just time for him to go. But Brad Underwood will have the team ready to go, I believe. We'll talk about that when we get to that. We're going to go through the bracket. Just make sure I have everything pulled up here the correct way, comparing the schedules. So let's pull up the bracket. So hopefully everybody can see it. I try to zoom in as much as possible. We will look at the West and just talk about teams that maybe should not be there. In the West, you have Gonzaga at the number 1 seed. There was no shock there. Now, Gonzaga is not the same Gonzaga as it has been in the past. Some people think they can lose, or way earlier this year. Some have them going to the Final Four. Some have them in the, in the big dance. But I don't really see them like in the past. They don't seem like the same type of powerhouse, but they're still pretty good. Let's not get it twisted. But again, they're not the same. They will be playing number 16 ranked Georgia State. So again, Gonzaga having a good first pick. Now looking at Gonzaga's schedule, because we want to look at it. They did beat Texas this year. They beat UCLA, but they did lose to Duke. They lost to Alabama. Then they did beat Texas Tech. So they've beat some pretty good teams. And then you look at their overall rest of their record, not the best. After that, their next ranked win wasn't until St. Mary's, and they beat them 3 times. So, I mean, the rest of them, I don't. But again, sometimes winning and building confidence is what does it. So, just want to talk about the number 1 seed there, and number 2 seed Duke, which is kind of funny. They have to go out to the West. Some people thought Duke should have been the number 1 seed, but again, Duke losing to North Carolina, then losing to Virginia Tech in their championship, gave them the number 2 seed, and then the number 3 seed Texas Tech. They started to play well, later on here in the end and into the tournaments. That's how they got them the 3 seed. So, looking at the big matchups that are going to be very fun to watch is Boise State and Memphis. Got to watch Boise State in their conference tournament. They look pretty good. And then Memphis has played well this year. They've been kind of up and down. They're a young team. I wouldn't sleep on that matchup. Of course, the next matchup is Uconn and New Mexico State. You always look at the 5-12 seed. New Mexico State could upset UConn. And then Rutgers and Notre Dame. Rutgers coming in from the Big Ten, they had that stretch of winning against ranked teams. So watching Rutgers personally from watching the Big Ten, they could beat Notre Dame and get in. I mean, they're in, but they can win and then play Alabama, who Alabama has been battle tested, SEC and Big Ten, probably the two best basketball conferences this year. But Notre Dame, no slouch either. But that's a great playing game of Rutgers and Notre Dame. Don't be shocked about Rutgers. They are pretty good. But those are the matchups that I'm looking for. And then again, you got Michigan State in there from the Big Ten as well, having to play Davidson. Davidson lost in their tournament today. But Michigan State, always a tough team to play with Tom Izzo there. So out of here, you've got a couple teams that could come out of the West. Gonzaga could come out of there. But I could also see Duke coming out of there. But it depends. Sometimes that pressure of trying to win for, Coach K's last go around might be too much. Another team that could, I'm going to say to come out of there could be Alabama. But actually looking at this, you would not be shocked to see an Arkansas or even a Michigan State come out of there. This is an interesting one where this one could go anywhere. I mean, obviously, each and every time it could go anywhere. But looking at this, don't be surprised if you're going to see one of those other teams come out of there. Then we'll scroll down here to the East. Out of there, we'll just do the top 4 seeds and 5 seeds here. One is Baylor. No shock there. Baylor, defending champion. North Carolina ranked pretty high. I think that Duke win really helped them out to get to the 8 seed. But looking at the 2 seed, Kentucky, again, people thought they could have been the 1 seed. This was a tough year to pick for 1 seeds and 2 seeds. 3 is Purdue, who just lost to Iowa in the Big Ten championship game in the Big Ten tournament. That's a team that could easily make it to the Final Four. And then 4, UCLA, who started to play better as the year has gone on. And then that 5 seed, St. Mary's, who's lost to Gonzaga 3 times. And then, so out of these, one of the big matchups that Marquette, North Carolina, got to see Marquette beat Illinois earlier in the year. North Carolina's got some confidence. That's going to be a great 8-9 matchup. It's a toss-up. I could see Marquette winning that game because they are battle-tested. Then the Wyoming, Indiana coming in, one of the last Big Ten teams. Now, I am shocked. One thing out of this is I am completely and utterly, not completely, I guess, but I am shocked that Indiana is a play-in. I thought they showed enough as the year went on, and then into the Big Ten tournament, which goes back to should we have both? And I've talked about where sometimes it's good to have that Big Ten or your conference tournament because it gives teams like this hope to get in how they've played. They had to do the down 17 to beat Michigan, who Michigan got in, and we'll talk about how high they're ranked, which is shocking. And then they beat Illinois, and then they lost on a buzzer beater to Iowa, and people are really high on Iowa now all of a sudden. So I am shocked that Indiana is a playing game, but so look to Indiana to be disrespected there and to beat Wyoming and beat St. Mary's. I'm going to go out and say that's what's going to happen. And then old Illinois coach John Gross is the head coach at Akron. They've won 2 MAC championships, I believe, back to back. They are in at the 13 seed. Look for them to compete with UCLA. So out of these matchups, those are a couple. Virginia Tech being on a high after beating Duke, and then Texas, who has played well this year. So look for that big matchup. And then Yale will give Purdue problems. Yale is lengthy, but Purdue, people have picked them to win the national championship or get to the Final Four. They have had some bumps in the road here, and especially against Iowa, but Purdue's going to be battle tested. They are going to be lengthy. They are going to play well, but that's going to be a good matchup. I'm not picking Yale to beat Purdue by any means. So great stuff there. And then Murray State coming in, 30-2 in their conference, playing San Francisco. Good matchups. So good matchups here all around. Out of this side, look for Baylor or Purdue and Kentucky to come out. Kentucky, playing well, but again, it's Kentucky, it could be up or down once they get to play a Purdue and they got the big length and the long guards and fast guards and guys that can shoot and guys down low. How is Kentucky going to handle that? Baylor's going to have a tough go in the second round, either against Marquette or North Carolina, but those are the ones that you look for to come out of there. Now we're going to go up to the South. Arizona coming in at the 1 seed. Nobody's really shocked there. Arizona has been playing pretty well. They're a really good basketball team. The 2 seed out of there is Villanova. Again, a lot of these could have been toss-ups. Villanova has played really, really well. Number 3 is Tennessee. Now, this one, kind of shocked. I kind of thought Tennessee could be a 2 or a 1 seed. Tennessee is fast. They're lengthy. I've got to watch them a couple of times this year. They're coached really, really well. That is a team that could win the national title. I am going out there saying it. If Illinois is going to lose to anybody, hopefully it'd be them. But if it was like an Arizona, Tennessee, look to Tennessee. They could do it. They're young, but they're quick and they're lengthy. They play incredibly tough. They rebound. So I was kind of shocked that they did not get a 1 seed. So I think they're going to take that as disrespect and use that as motivation. At the 3 seed there, and then Illinois did get the 4 seed. They got to play Chattanooga, which we talked about. So let's go through some of these games. Bryant, I believe that's Bryant University, who I'm friends with Coach Yossi. Coach Yossi is an offensive line coach there, so I'm going to have to root for them to win that game, but good playing game there. Then when you look through this, UAB coming at the 12 seed versus Houston, the 5 seed, UAB can beat Houston. UAB is on fire right now, and they can beat Houston. They will give Houston some problems. Now, Michigan comes in at 11. I think they should have been on the bubble. They are 17-4. They had the weakest Big Ten schedule at one point going into it. And I'm going to talk about this at the end because I fall into this too, and we'll get to this in a second. They started to play better at the end, and I'm on record saying that they did. They started to play well at the end, especially when all the suspensions and everything else. Juwan Howard getting suspended. They started to play a lot better. But there was a point where we talked about them being in NIT. They lose to North Carolina. They did not have a tough schedule. When you look at their schedule, they lose to Arizona big. They lose to North Carolina big. They lose to Minnesota. They lose to UCF, and they lose to Rutgers. And Illinois did too. But then they had to postpone their Michigan State game and Purdue game to later on. Then they lose to Illinois. They lose to Michigan State. They lose to Purdue. Then they lose to Ohio State. They lose to Wisconsin. Lose to Illinois. Then they started to play better. They beat Michigan State. Then they lost to Iowa and lost to Indiana. At one point, they had the weakest Big Tens, part or the weakest schedule part at the time. When no offense to these teams, but like Nebraska and Minnesota and everything else. So I'm not saying they shouldn't have been in, but I think they should have been in the playing game. I think it could have been like Bryant versus Michigan, or maybe not even a play-in, but I think Michigan could have been the 15 seed or something else like that, 15, 14 seed somewhere in there. So I think they're ranked too high against Colorado State, who's a pretty good team. And then Loyola gets in at a 10 seed versus Ohio State. Now, again, if I'm Ohio State, this is a trap game. Illinois had it last year. Loyola is not a bad team, and you watch them play. They play good team basketball. They rebound well. They can shoot. This is a trap game. And these are some, Ohio State's good. Watching them play, they are good. But again, the Big Ten's been up and down. They have had teams where they play really elite, and then when they don't. This, to me, is a trap game for Ohio State. So do not be surprised if Loyola does beat Ohio State. Now, I will not be shocked if Ohio State does win, but this is a trap game for them. This is our 5-12 seed is Houston UAB, but this one is really interesting to be a 7 and a 10. Then to the Illinois Chattanooga. I saw a tweet. I don't know how true it is. That's about Chattanooga is 333 ranked in 2-point defense. So Kofi should have a game, whatever that's true or not. But Chattanooga is going to have history on their side. Looking at their schedule, again, not the toughest of the tough. They play teams like UNC, Asheville, Tennessee Tech, Belmont. Now, Murray State they beat, who made the tournament. Middle Tennessee, West Carolina University, Wofford, Citadel, Mercer twice in a row, Samford, and all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's a terrible one, but I mean, they're 27-7. The next one in there is Furman. They are 22-12. Samford went 21-11. So not, again, basketball is different than football. You have to look at a lot more in basketball. So Chattanooga's going to have history on their side. Illinois is going to have some good rest. They are going to be very battle tested. I don't know on Chattanooga's team who's going to be able to guard Kofi Coburn. So Illinois is, we've talked about, and we'll talk about it again going into it. They'll play Friday. Illinois had the tougher schedule because we've had to play Kansas State, we've had to play Notre Dame, Rutgers, Iowa, Arizona, which we played close. And then, you have to play Michigan, who's made it, Purdue, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Indiana, Purdue again, and all that. So we've had just a lot of rough go, a tough schedule. So Illinois is just going to have to shoot the ball well. Kofi's going to have to score, all that stuff we've talked about every single post-game podcast that I've done with Illinois. But this is not this is a tough matchup. It is. It's not going to be this, but I do feel a little bit better about it than Loyola, because Loyola, was underseeded. We probably shouldn't have played them. Loyola should have been ranked a little higher. So, and us not having the pressure of being the 1 seed and everything like that. And I think the pressure of the Big Ten tournament's gone, and they're going to be motivated. They're going to learn from the mistakes. And Kofi's going to have an opportunity to say, this is, I'm going to come up and dominate. Trent Frazier's going to show up and try to dominate. And if we can get Granderson back, that's going to help out tremendously. So out of this, obviously the big favorite here is going to be Arizona coming out of there. Villanova is the 2 seed. When you look at other ones like Duke come out of there, and this, not saying Villanova can't, but they're probably going to beat Delaware, but then they have to beat like Ohio State or Loyola. And then looking at this, Tennessee's probably going to come out from the bottom, and I think Tennessee could beat Villanova. But out of this, you're looking at Arizona to come out of there. Illinois could still come out of this. If Illinois wins, I have to play the winner of UAB Houston, which could be UAB. Illinois can win there, but then we're going to get probably another Arizona-Illinois matchup, and that's probably where it could end. I could see Illinois going to the Sweet 16, Elite 8. But out of this, look for Tennessee, Arizona, Illinois to come out of this. I don't see Villanova doing it, but they could. I could see those type of teams coming out of that. Then we'll go to the last spot here. Kansas with the number 1 seed in the Midwest region. Number 2, Auburn, who has not played well. They played very well at the beginning and had, just that 1 or 2 losses, and then they come playing bad at the end. Then you look at the 3 seed is Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. Big Ten is representing, and then the number 4 seed Providence, who has played very, very well, and then Iowa coming in at the 5, and they've been hot. And I hate Iowa basketball, but they have been hot. Got a lot of good matchups here. Texas A&M CC playing Texas Southern as the playing game to play number 1 seed Kansas, who has played a lot better. So out of this, really good matchups. LSU at the 6th seed playing Iowa State as the 11th seed. That's going to be a great matchup. LSU's had some turmoil, new coaching staff and everything. So Iowa State is primed to upset there. Wisconsin playing Colgate. I could see Wisconsin winning that as they share the Big Ten title with Illinois. Big time matchup here is USC and Miami. This will be a fun one. Coming from 2 good basketball conferences. Miami could win that, the 10-7 seed. That's going to be a really exciting matchup to watch. And then Iowa as the 5 seed versus Richmond, who won over Davidson in their conference championship game. 1 or 2 things are going to happen with Iowa. They're playing a lot better. Illinois got them at the end of the regular season. Illinois was fired up to try to win the Big Ten regular season. Iowa did not hit free throws at the end. And Illinois got them, but then Iowa's played hot. They're shooting the ball well. They're playing better defense. So a couple of things are going to happen here with Iowa. 1, they're going to fall into that 12-5 curse and lose. Or they're going to get hot and win games they're not supposed to. Richmond is a good team, but Iowa's a big team too. Or Iowa's a big team. They're very lengthy. They're shooting well. I saw them hit shots today versus Purdue, hand in their face, Kobe Bryant style, hand in their face, and they hit the shots. Purdue made some stupid decisions when they got the ball overthrown to them, like a football game, and score. So a couple things there are going to happen with Iowa. So looking at this bracket here, again, coming out of it, it's probably going to be Kansas. Providence, I'm going to go out there and say if Iowa wins versus Providence, I could see Providence beating Iowa, but people are really high on Providence, and I'm curious to see how Iowa is going to handle that type of pressure. I'm not a fan of their coach. I'm not a fan of that program. So I could see Kansas, Providence, Iowa, or Auburn, Wisconsin. It's going to be very interesting. Auburn not playing well at the stretch. I see them winning against Jacksonville State, but the Miami USC is going to be interesting. And then if they get to Wisconsin, Wisconsin can beat Auburn. I'm going on the record saying it. So those are the type of those are the teams that you could see coming out of there. It is very exciting. And then again, you're playing games, Rutgers and Notre Dame, which can be huge. And then the Indiana, Wyoming one. Those are the two you're going to be interested in. Indiana, I think, should have just been in the way they played at the end. The Rutgers, I understand, but the way Indiana played at the end could have been in. Real quick, let's talk about some teams that didn't get in, and one team in particular for me. There's two people are talking about. One is Oklahoma, which I am perfectly fine with Oklahoma not being in the tournament. That one doesn't bother me as much. The one that probably needs to be talked about is Texas A&M. Texas A&M at the end here in this tournament has played well. Now their schedule was not the best going in, and they did have this long stretch of losing. But look at the strength of their schedule here in these losses, the string of losses they had. Kentucky, Arkansas, LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Auburn. Then they get a win against Florida, and then they lose to Vanderbilt. But then they go on a run here. Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas. Now part of this is their SEC tournament, and then they lose to Tennessee in the SEC championship. So when we look at the whole SEC, Auburn makes it in, Kentucky makes it in, Tennessee makes it in, Arkansas and LSU. Then they are, they have a better regular season record than Alabama, and Alabama makes it in. So the question becomes, why does Texas A&M not make it? It's that string of losses hurts. It really does. And if you want to look at Alabama's schedule, they're non-conference a little bit there. They did beat Gonzaga, and they did beat Miami, and they did beat Houston. But they lost their fair share. They've lost to Auburn and Mississippi State and Missouri and Auburn again, Kentucky, and they lost to Georgia, who was not very good. Lost to Kentucky, and then they lost to Texas A&M. So it becomes a little tricky. I thought Texas A&M showed enough to where they're getting hot at the right time. And that's the only thing with NCAA March Madness. We always talk about don't get caught in the heat of the moment. Don't be caught, what's going on right now. Look at the whole body of work. But the history of NCAA basketball is, being a prisoner of the moment at the end, because they talk about when do they get hot, and then they base it off that. So that's where I get confused on. We don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but when a team is playing well, and that's the whole point of having your conference tournament, which I'm not saying to get rid of it. I know I've talked about it before. I'm not saying get rid of it. It was just a thought. To get rid of it hurts a team like this, where they go into their conference tournament and they beat teams they weren't supposed to. They beat Florida, and then they beat Auburn. They beat Arkansas, and then they played well against Tennessee, and Tennessee just proved, because Tennessee is poised to make a Final Four run. How does Texas A&M not get in? And then to look at, we're looking at the bracket. Are you telling me that they don't deserve to get in over Delaware or something? No offense to Delaware. Do they deserve to get in at least a plan more than Notre Dame, or, no offense to these other teams like Wyoming and them? Like, I think they showed enough in a tough tournament to get in. Other teams in here won their conference, so they deserve to get in, but other teams that didn't, you can't tell me that some of them, they didn't deserve a shot, or at least a play-in shot. Maybe them in Indiana or them in Rutgers or something like that. I just thought they showed enough to get. Oklahoma, I'm fine with. They didn't show enough at the end. But that's my problem a little bit when they're picking these, because we talk about who gets hot at the right time. But then that's also called prisoner of the moment. We don't want to be prisoners of the moment. But at the end of the day, too, we always talk about getting hot at the right time. They're hot at the right time. And when you talk about their record, they're 23-12, and Alabama's is 19-13. So they took the whole offseason and everything else too. I understand that, but it's just so weird when you look at the SEC standings. LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina were all 6 games back from the top, which was Auburn in the regular season. But it's just weird how it skips over them. You got Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, LSU who get in. Then it skips Texas A&M. Texas A&M is next, skips them, and then Alabama gets in right behind, right around below them. Like maybe you should have put Texas A&M in over Alabama. Alabama probably the tougher strength of schedule. That string of losses here for Texas A&M probably really hurt them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 losses in a row. But then they got hot. They ended in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 game win streak. And during that 7-game win streak, they beat Alabama, they beat Auburn, and they beat Arkansas, and they got to the SEC championship game. And some of their losses aren't that bad. Earlier when they lost to Arkansas, they lost by 3. Kentucky was only 64-58. And then they beat all these other teams too. I mean, they beat Notre Dame. Wisconsin was a decently close game at points. I mean, so that one confuses me. The rest of them, I think they're okay. As some people think SMU should have got in. People think Oklahoma. And I'm okay with Oklahoma not getting in. But that one, I wasn't 100% all on board with for them. But that's really all I have a problem with. So the bracket's set. It's a great time. Don't get caught at work filling it out. Fun stuff. Illinois is going to be a fun game. I'm going to pick Illinois to win, but that's not a walk in the park game. History's going to be on their side. So those are the thoughts of coming out of each bracket. I'll put out there later on social media or on here. Maybe I'll do one where I fill it in, but I'm a person who fills in multiple because I'm not 100%. So I need to pick one and say on the podcast, this is the one, which will come out next. I don't want to do it right here because I have to sit and think about it. That'll be coming out later. But that wraps up this one. Just talking about Sunday selection. It's one of the most wonderful times of the year. So thank you guys for watching and or listening. Please hit the like button, subscribe button, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Check out all the affiliates in the description below. Follow it, rate it, be a friend, tell a friend. Check out the weekly episodes. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Please share it out too. All the stuff you do there helps get the show out there. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. This has been another episode of the Coach Chief Show podcast. Have fun filling out the brackets, and we'll see you guys on the next one.